The 8th time I got dropped into a billionaire romance novel, the story was already halfway through. I dutifully played my part as the villainous CEO's devoted, graceful, and oh so frugal fiancé. But that bastard's affection level for me was still stuck at a measly 20, exactly where it had started. To put that in perspective, a stray dog getting a quick pat on the street would probably hit an affinity level of 30. If he wasn't going to give a damn, then neither was I. Screw it. The 8th time I found myself in this world, the main plot was already in full swing. I was the long-suffering fiancé of the story's villain, pretending to be the perfect penny-pinching partner. And yet, his affection level for me remained frozen at 20. Honestly, a stray dog would like me more after a single pat. What do we do, host? If we don't succeed soon, my performance bonus is going to get docked. The system's tinny voice buzzed in my ear, grating on my last nerve. Let it get docked. Worst case, I'll cover it for you. I stormed down the stairs, my face a mask of ice, and nearly collided with the villain himself, Hans Thorn, who had just returned home. His expression was dark, radiating pure irritation. Based on my last 7 attempts, I knew this was the part of the story where the hero and heroine had just gotten engaged. Crossing my arms, I smirked. Well, look at that thundercloud on your face, Mr. Thorn. Did the lovely Miss Meadows turn you down again? The moment the words left my mouth, Hans's glacial gaze snapped to me. The system audibly gasped in my head. Are you insane? Our mission is to win him over. Win him over? Win him over, my ass. I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly saw my brain. 7 times. 7 goddamn times I'd thrown myself at this mission. The only other thing I'd ever tried that hard for was my SATs. So what if the mission failed? I wasn't desperate for the points. All the frustration I'd swallowed over the past 7 lives, I was cashing it all in right here, right now. Was I wrong? I arched an eyebrow, dancing gleefully on the landmine of his ego. You know, you're actually kind of pathetic, Mr. Thorn. You've been her backup option for years and you still can't compete with the guy who just showed up out of nowhere? Hans's eyes grew colder, sharper. He strode toward me, his godlike face etched with frost. Raw, murderous intent glittered in his dark eyes as he cornered me against the wall. What did you just say? Are you deaf? I shot back, raising my voice. You're a simp. You've got a gorgeous, devoted fiancé right here, but you'd rather chase after another man's woman? System ping, villain's affection level has increased by 5. Me, holy crap. Was this guy a masochist? I took a moment for some serious self-reflection. When I was sweet and accommodating, his affection either stagnated or dropped. But the second I trash-talked him, it went up. Could it be? Did Hans Thorn have a thing for verbal abuse? No, that couldn't be right. The heroine, Erica Meadows, was the epitome of a gentle, innocent little flower. Hans himself looked stunned, as if he couldn't comprehend how the woman who was always as placid as still water had suddenly turned into a raging storm. I couldn't be bothered to explain. I shoved him aside. From now on, Hans, you can go on being her pathetic simp, and I'll go on living my fabulous life. I walked straight out of the Thorn mansion and hailed a cab to the most exclusive shopping district in the city. In the car, the system asked timidly, Host, are you trying a new strategy to win him over? I was silent for a few seconds. Honestly, do you really think that asshole is winnable? Can't we just switch targets? Well, the system stammered, this one was always rated as high difficulty. But don't worry, host, our next mission is super easy. Great, I muttered, rubbing my temples. The whole thing's exhausting. Imagine failing the same exam 7 times in a row. You'd want to walk out of the testing center too. Even with that tiny bump in his affection level, I had zero motivation to continue. Going from 0 to 5 was still a spectacular fail. Once I reached the mall, I picked the most expensive steakhouse I could find, filled my stomach, and embarked on a shopping spree of epic proportions. The heroine of this world was a poor, innocent girl who preached the virtues of frugality. To make Hans fall for me, I had forced myself to abandon my lavish spending habits and mimic her. But now, with Hans's no-limit black card in my hand, my steps felt light as air. Today, I'd start by casually blowing through a cool million. To hell with being frugal. I was born to spend money. Hans caught up with me after I finished watching a movie. He practically threw me into his car. What have you been doing all day? I flashed my new diamond ring and bracelet. Didn't you get the text alerts? I've been shopping. Diana Vance, you've got some nerve, he seethed, his face darkening further. I certainly do, I agreed cheerfully. It takes nerve to burn through $1 million in a single afternoon. I held out the black card. Here. He didn't take it. I plan on doing this every day for the foreseeable future, I added, waving it. The threat was clear: take it back or prepare for an avalanche of transaction alerts. Hans remained motionless. I'll have the alerts turned off. That wasn't really the point, was it? Well, if he wasn't taking it back, I was happy to keep using it. Spending someone else's money was a uniquely thrilling experience. Hans just kept staring at me, his dark eyes cold and unreadable. I straightened my spine, ready for a fight. Putting aside his personality, Hans Thorn was undeniably gorgeous, easily on par with the novel's hero. But to me, he was just an impossible test. And who falls in love with a test you can never pass? He was silent so long my eyes started to burn from the staring contest. What are you looking at? Did you suddenly realize how devastatingly beautiful I am and fall head over heels? A muscle in his jaw twitched. Are you possessed? Possessed, my ass, I snapped, then spotted a lively street food market nearby. Stop the car. Hans followed me out. I picked a bustling barbecue joint, but before sitting down, I noticed Hans's gaze lock onto something, his eyes turning to ice. A short distance away, the hero Leo had his arm wrapped around the heroine Erica. They looked like a picture-perfect couple basking in the glow of love. Then I looked at Hans beside me. His face was a thunderous mask of rage. TSK, TSK, I muttered, twisting the knife. They look so perfect together, don't they? A match made in heaven. Hans shot me a look that screamed shut up. You know, Mr. Thorn, I continued mercilessly, at this point, if you try to interfere, you're not the other man, you're the other woman. Diana, would it kill you to be quiet? He hissed. I smiled sweetly. Hans, would it kill you to stop being in love with Erica Meadows? A complex emotion flickered across his face. He stared at me but said nothing. I ignored him, happily devouring a mountain of barbecue before we got back in the car. Just as I was about to close the door, a soft voice called out behind us. Hans, can we talk? It was Erica, looking as gentle and lovely as ever, eyes glistening with heartbreak. I waved a hand dismissively and stepped aside, making myself scarce. I bought a boba tea and squatted under a street light while waiting. The system piped up, disgusted. Host, you can't just give up. We have to get back in the game. Oh, system, just let it go, I sighed. The sky's gonna rain, my mom's gonna get married, and the villain's hopelessly in love with the heroine. What can I do? A shadow fell over me. I looked up. Hans was standing there, tall and sharp-featured against the light. You two done? I asked, getting to my feet. My legs had gone numb. Hans grunted softly. Yeah. Seeing him like that, I knew. Another rejection. For the nth time? A rare wave of pity washed over me. I patted his shoulder. You know, sometimes in life you just have to accept it. She didn't choose you. I mean, who would choose a guy who's blind? Hans's mouth twitched. He roughly pulled me into the car. Who are you calling blind? You, obviously, I said flatly. You have a woman this beautiful, this graceful, this perfect, and you don't even see her. If that's not blind, what is? System ping, villain's affection level has increased by 5. Me, son of a bitch. He really is a masochist. Hans studied me intensely, as if trying to see straight through to my soul. I ignored him. As soon as we got back to the mansion, I started packing. The system practically vibrated with excitement. Host, I get it. This is reverse psychology. You're pulling back to draw him in. Reverse psychology, my ass, I muttered. I'm done. To solidify my freedom, I moved out of Hans's mansion. $1 million didn't last forever, but it was enough for a nice condo. Once settled in my fabulous new home, I texted my partner in crime, got any cute boy toys? Send a few my way. Her reply came instantly. Diana, are you possessed? Possessed, my ass. I've turned over a new leaf. Can't a girl start fresh? She was thrilled. Yes. Welcome to the Bad Girls Club. Within minutes, she'd sent me profiles of 3 different guys. I added them all and juggled 3 conversations at once with ease. That evening, Hans finally noticed I was gone. His call came through. Where are you? His voice was as clipped and cold as ever. I was in the middle of a DIY manicure, one hand poised elegantly. I moved out, I said cheerfully. There was a pause. Diana, what the hell are you playing at? I already told you. We're going our separate ways. Fine. Do whatever you want. He hung up. I admired my freshly painted nails and blew on them gently. To be honest, even though Hans eventually became the ultimate villain who destroyed the hero and took over half the corporate world, he had never treated me badly. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe something else. The next day, Hans showed up at Erica's place with a pink gift box in hand. And how did I know? Because the condo I'd just bought was right next door to the heroine's. From my balcony, I had a perfect view. I could see the coy reluctance on Erica's face and the mole on the tip of Hans's nose with crystal clarity. Hey, system, I mused. How can a guy like Hans be such a simp? Maybe because she's the heroine, it answered. That was probably true. In this world, every important man was contractually obligated to fall for her, no questions asked. I watched for a while, then went back inside. I was about to crawl into bed for a glorious nap when a text from Hans came through. Hans, open the door. I shot up in bed like I'd been electrocuted. Had he seen me earlier? I peeked over the balcony. The yard next door was empty, but when I leaned further, my eyes locked with a pair of dark, intense ones. He was standing on the street, the afternoon sun casting a golden halo around him, making him look even more devastatingly handsome. Diana Vance, he called up. Come down and open the door. I slipped on my slides and went downstairs. The moment I opened the door, he got straight to the point. You used my card to buy a condo here. Didn't you say I could spend it on whatever I wanted? I shot back without guilt. Hans's gaze swept across the room before settling on me. Why here? I paused, considering. Do you want the honest truth or the real truth? Real truth, he said immediately. To get a front row seat to watch you simping for another woman, of course. Real truth, he said immediately. To get a front row seat to watch you simping for another woman, of course. Hans's expression didn't so much as flinch. He stood there, 6 foot something of sculpted frostbite, framed by my doorway like a warning sign the universe forgot to take down. Only his eyes moved, tracking the curve of my cheek, the looseness of my messy bun, the brazen nonchalance with which I leaned on the frame, as if he didn't own half the city and the other half owed him favors. Open the window when you eavesdrop, at least, I added, stepping back. You'll hear the dialogue better without the glass. He walked in as if it were his condo, not bothering to pretend he needed my permission. The system cleared its throat inside my skull, which was ridiculous, considering it didn't have lungs. Host, it whispered, remember, maintaining healthy boundaries is. Shut it, I said out loud, and Hans's gaze flicked to my lips. Still talking to yourself, he noted. That hasn't changed. Neither has your taste in women, I replied brightly. So, was the pink box a success? Did she accept the peace offering? Or did she hold it to her chest and sigh about how complicated life is, then ask you to give her time while she marries someone else? His stare went flat. I smiled wider. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed and a bus hissed to a stop. Right next door, a door clicked shut, Erica's. A soft laugh drifted through the shared wall, warm as a hearth. Hans's jaw hardened. Why here? He repeated, voice gentler now. Really? I lifted one shoulder. Because it amuses me. Because it's petty. Because I can. Pick one. He took 2 unhurried steps in and stopped an arm's length away. He smelled like iron cotton and rain, even though the sky had been cloudless all day. You're not petty, he said. Oh, I said sweetly, so you do see me? Diana. He tasted the name like it might answer a question he didn't know how to phrase. What are you doing? Spending your money. Dating for sport. Sleeping 8 hours and waking up to sunlight rather than alarm clocks and broken hopes. Are you familiar with leisure? It's when a person stops humiliating herself for a man who wouldn't cross a puddle for her. A long breath left him, almost a laugh if he remembered how. Give the card back, he said, but the words sounded wrong in his mouth, like he was repeating a script he no longer believed. I twirled the card between my fingers and deliberately set it on the console table beside the door. There. Liberating, isn't it? Now you can spend your own money chasing your own heartbreak. He stared at the card like it was evidence in a trial. You used it to buy the condo, he said. Yes. I smiled. Consider it alimony for my youth, my patience, and the way I memorized your coffee order down to the number of ice cubes. Half my 20s dissolved in you like sugar. I billed you retroactively. His throat worked. You think very little of me. I think precisely of you, I said. And of me. And of her. The dynamic is simple math, Hans, I'm not a charity. Not anymore. We stood in the quiet hum of my newly purchased air conditioner. Then he reached for the card and missed, his fingers closing instead around my wrist where the blue vein pulsed steady and unimpressed. What did you mean, he asked, by blind? I took my time answering because it was the first honest question he'd asked me in this life. It means you won't see what doesn't fit your story, I said softly. Even when it's standing right in front of you, even when it bleeds for you, even when it hands you your victory and asks for nothing. Blind means you choose a script over a person. His eyes lowered to the fragile place his thumb pressed. For a second, I thought he would speak. Instead, he let go. I'll send someone to move your things back, he said. I laughed, bright and ugly. And I'll send them away. You don't get to be magnanimous now that I'm fun. Go, Hans. Your heroine is waiting. Take her another box. Maybe this time it'll open into a proposal. He looked at me for a long heartbeat. Then he picked up the card, turned it once, and slipped it into my palm again. Keep it, he said, and walked out. The door clicked shut. The system exhaled like it had been underwater. Host. What? His affection level increased by 10. I flopped onto my new sofa and covered my face with a cushion. He's allergic to me when I'm nice and addicted when I'm mean. If this is a kink arc, I refuse. Correlation is not causation, the system said primly. Go. The pattern is robust. Say kink, I told it. It said nothing. I rolled onto my stomach and texted my partner in crime, make the boys line up. By sunset, I had a dessert menu of possibilities, a charming photographer with big hands and bigger smiles, a cocky barista poet with bad tattoos and worse decisions, an investment bro who would talk to me about distressed assets like it was foreplay. I booked all 3 for the week and accepted a spontaneous invitation to a rooftop gallery show with the photographer for that very night. The city at dusk was painted in warm gradients. The gallery was all white walls and overpriced wine, lit with the soft arrogance of money that never worried about running out. I wore a silk slip under a blazer and diamonds heavy enough to remind me who had funded this new phase of my life. You look like a secret, my date said appreciatively. Good, I said, and took his arm. I've been boring for 7 lifetimes. We were halfway through a piece called Woman in Mint when the air prickled the way it does right before a storm. The hairs on my neck lifted. I turned. Across the room, a shadow moved like it owned shadows. Hans. I don't know who he came with. I don't know who he left with. I just know that when his eyes found me, really found me, like spotlights in a blackout, every conversation around us dimmed to a hum. The photographer straightened. Hans didn't look at him. His focus pinned me to the wall. You have a type, the system murmured. Apparently, apex predators. Shh. I raised my glass in Hans's direction. He didn't react, but his gaze dipped, once, to the photographer's hand on my waist. Is that your boss? My date asked. Worse, I said. My ex-fiancé. Oof, he said sympathetically. Should I kiss you so he knows what he lost? The suggestion thrilled me more than it should have. No, I said, and then because I was not above theater, I touched the photographer's jaw and laughed into his mouth like a woman who did not flinch. The kiss tilted the room. When I broke it, I saw Hans turn away, slow, as if he had to remember how a body pivoted. Host, the system said faintly, affection level. Another 5. For who? A pause. Unclear. I left before Hans could reach me. I did not run, I glided, like I had all the time in the world. At the elevator, the door slid open to reveal him's reflection in the steel, tall, composed, ruin in his suit. I stepped in. He followed. Leaving so early? He asked. Beauty sleep, I said. Takes hours to look this effortless. The elevator purred. He stood just far enough away to be polite and just close enough to be a problem. You kissed him, he said. You hugged her, I said. How is your math so selective? Besides, you gave me your card. A woman has to compensate for her tragic past. His mouth curled, not in humor. That's not how compensation works. Everything is how I say it works, I said, and the doors opened. The week became a mosaic of choices that had never belonged to me before. I danced on a rooftop under fairy lights. I let the poet read a terrible sonnet into my shoulder. I learned the barista's laugh by heart and forgot it by morning. Each night I slept like it was a religion. Each morning I woke like I'd been born again with fresh contempt for the old script. And Hans? He became a rumor around the edges of those days. A black car idling at the curb when I came home. A bouquet on my doormat that I stepped over because I refused to water anything that couldn't water itself. A presence on the balcony below mine, smoking a cigarette he never lit, his profile cut out of the night like a bad decision. You could go down there, the system suggested once, tentative. You could end this. And what? I asked. The story? The ache? The version of me who thought patience would be rewarded? She's already gone. But you haven't left, it whispered. You bought the condo next to hers. I bought a front row seat, I corrected. To watch him learn the cost of worship. He learned quickly. 2 things landed in the same week, an invitation and a scandal. The invitation was printed on paper thick enough to hammer a nail, the Goodwin Foundation Gala, theme Constellations of Hope. Erica would be there on Leo's arm. Hans would be there, as the perennial sponsor with a wallet that could buy the night. The scandal was a leak, screen recordings of texts Erica had allegedly sent to a friend, detailing the plan. Screenshots fluttered across group chats like confetti. The captions were brutal. So easy, one message read. He's like a retriever, throw affection, he fetches. Another, I don't even need to marry Leo. I just need him to propose publicly. The goodwill will convert into a brand and I'll be set. As for Hans, he's sunk cost. He'll fund the bridge to the next thing. I stared at the grainy bubbles until the words turned to static. The system hovered at my shoulder like a nosy aunt. These could be fabricated, it cautioned. Confirmation biases. I know. I scrubbed a hand over my face. I know. Are you angry? Yes, I said. But not at her. At whom, then? At the architecture, I said. At the way this world always calls the worst behavior inevitable when it benefits the right people. I didn't send the screenshots to Hans. Not because I wanted to protect Erica, but because I wanted him to look up and see the sky was not a ceiling. He wouldn't, if I painted it for him. The gala arrived like a verdict anyway. I wore midnight blue threaded with silver, stars spilled over silk. My hair was a waterfall, my mouth was the color of revenge. The ballroom was a constellation of donors and their egos. Photographers snapped. Waiters glided. The charity in question, STEM scholarships for girls, was something I could almost care about, if the men funding it didn't keep winking at me like they were buying virtue off the rack. I saw Erica first, at the top of the marble stairs. She looked breathtaking because of course she did, sleek white, bare shoulders, tears poised like jewelry. Leo hovered, attentive, beautiful and earnest in that way heroes can only manage by believing their own press releases. When she spotted me, her smile faltered for half a second before rallying into sweetness. Diana, she breathed, like we were old friends. You look stunning. You too, I said. You must be exhausted from being so adored. Her lashes fluttered. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do, I said, and left her with that. Hans found me at the bar, because of course he did. He looked like a man dragged through a storm and too proud to admit he hadn't dressed for rain. You came, he said, as if I'd promised not to. I like stars, I said. And good causes. You don't need an invitation to stand under the sky. And good causes don't need this circus. Ah, I said, so we agree on something. A string quartet swelled. A presenter tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, she crowed, tonight, a special announcement. People turned instinctively toward the stairs. Leo, handsome in his tux, had that glow men get when they believe fate is about to reward their goodness. Erica glided to center, hand pressed to her chest as if to keep her heart from flying out. The presenter gestured. A spotlight bloomed. I knew the choreography by feel. The cameras positioned. The phones lifted. Leo went to one knee. A collective sigh rippled across the room like warm oil. I felt Hans go very still beside me, a ship hitting fog that wasn't fog at all but cliff. Erica's face arranged itself into shock and wonder. She looked at Leo, at the ring, at the crowd, then, for a sliver of a second, at Hans. I watched that glance land like a coin tossed into a well. Hans didn't move. Host, the system breathed. Should we? No, I said. Let the scene play. Erica Meadows, Leo said into the mic, voice ringing, will you marry me and make the rest of my life worthy of the beginning you gave me? It was a perfect line. The kind of thing people quote under wedding photos and divorce papers alike. Erica covered her mouth. Her eyes sparkled. The room leaned closer, hungry. And then a phone chimed. It was a small sound in a symphony of gasps, but somehow it threaded the needle and pierced the moment's skin. Another phone chimed. Another. The presenter blinked. Whispers chased the chimes like minnows. On the walls, the LED starfield paused because someone, somewhere, lost control of the board for half a second. A glitch. A stutter. My own phone buzzed. I didn't look. Erica's hand lowered. She seemed to float in a white noise she didn't understand. Leo held the pose with the tranquil patience of a saint. On the mezzanine above us, a woman put a hand to her mouth. The quartet faltered, both hands stuttering in eerie unison. Hans, I said quietly, because he had stopped breathing. He didn't answer. But I saw his eyes shift, at last, off the script, through the fog, to me. Erica took the mic with a trembling smile. Leo, she said, voice perfectly pitched to Carrie. This is so sudden. It wasn't, someone murmured behind me. The PR teams had this slotted for weeks. And Erica stammered. Can we talk in private? Please. Leo's hurt was a physical thing, tender and exposed. He rose slowly, like a soldier ordered to stand down. The audience made the kind of sympathetic coo people think is kindness when it's just appetite. I watched Hans choose. Not me. Not her. Himself. He walked forward, unhurried, and relieved the presenter of the microphone with a nod he made look like a royal decree. On behalf of the Goodwin Foundation, he said, voice smooth as a blade, thank you for your generosity tonight. We will continue our regularly scheduled program after a brief interlude. In the lobby, you'll find an exhibit of the girls' designs, brighter stars than we deserve. I invite you to see what hope looks like when it has nothing to prove. He didn't look at Erica. He handed the mic back and the quartet found their thread and the crowd, greedy for a new narrative, streamed toward the lobby. He came to me. Stopped. The storm in his shoulders had broken, the air around him smelled like ozone. You didn't send them to me, he said. The screenshots? I let my glass dangle. No. Why? Because you don't love me yet, I said, and watched the words knock the wind out of him. And because love isn't evidence. It's decision. He exhaled. For a second, his eyes softened so completely I nearly forgot the last 7 deaths. The system hiccuped. Affection level, it whispered. 25 in a single spike. Bug, I told it. Ignore. Come with me, Hans said. To where? To see hope with nothing to prove. I followed him because I wanted to believe that sentence could exist outside a monologue. The lobby was fresh with youth. Girls in 2 big blazers hovered beside 3D printed bridges and coded stars that pulsed when you clapped. A teenage girl with acne scars and a mouth like a prophecy demonstrated an app that helped track water usage in low-income housing. Another showed us a drone that could deliver epinephrine in under 3 minutes across traffic we pretended was progress. This, Hans said, his voice scraped clean, this is why I fund the circus. Then fund it without the circus, I said. You could. His mouth tilted. I could. A reporter materialized. Mr. Thorne, can we get a comment on the proposal? No, he said, and the reporter vanished like smoke. He looked at me. You're cruel. You're late, I said gently. He took that like a man willing to pay penalties. Walk with me tomorrow, he said. No entourage. No script. I have breakfast, I said. I'll bring coffee. I have lunch. He sighed. I'll bring patience. What a rare commodity, I said, and left him with the girls and their prototypes and the first crack in the mirror he'd been worshipping. The next morning, he was waiting outside my building with 2 coffees and a look of someone who'd slept on a thesis. We walked along the river while the city shook off last night's glitter. He didn't talk about Erica. He didn't talk about me. He talked about sidewalks, the ones that ended too soon in neighborhoods that weren't his. He talked about a food desert mapped in red lines and gray statistics. He talked about his mother, who had understood hunger intimately and hated pity like poison. I listened because for the first time, he had something to say that didn't revolve around his reflection. At the pier, I took one of the coffees. I never asked about your mother, I said. In any of the 7 versions of us. You did, he said softly. I didn't answer. And now? She left, he said. Because she had to choose which hunger she would starve and she chose herself. It took me 20 years to understand the math. I like her, I said. So do I, he said, and something almost like a smile haunted his mouth. The system made a small, delighted noise. Don't, I warned it. It hushed. After that, his presence changed flavor. He stopped haunting thresholds and started showing up in the mundane spaces of my actual life. He leaned against the doorframe while I burned pancakes. He sat on my floor while I assembled a bookshelf, reading out the instructions in a voice that made insert dowel A into slot B sound like foreplay. He washed dishes like he'd only recently met the concept. He also vanished for hours into meetings that smelled like blood. The board was sharp, his rivals were sharpening. Leo, humiliated and human again, withdrew into whatever fortress heroes use when the script deserts them. Erica, if the tabloids could be trusted, took a wellness sabbatical upstate to reconnect with nature, which I assumed meant aligning her aura with an algorithm. I didn't see her until she saw me. It was at the farmer's market on a gray morning that tasted like rain and peaches. I was buying tomatoes. She was buying sympathy, which the world sells in bulk to the beautiful. "Diana," she said, with that soft tremor that made men feel like scaffolding. Do you have a minute?" I looked at the tomatoes, heavy and honest in their crates. "Okay," I said. She led me to a quiet corner where the flower vendors were still setting up. "The screenshots," she whispered. "They were edited?" "Of course they were," I said. Her lashes lifted. "You believe me?" "I believe you're smart enough not to put the plan in writing," I said. "So yes." She flinched. "I never meant to hurt him." "You meant to use him," I said. "The way this world taught you. The way it taught all of us, take the path that glitters, call it fate, apologize if caught, cry just enough to be absolved." Her mouth trembled. "I care about him." "I know," I said, and surprised myself by meaning it. "But you care about the stage more." She swallowed. "Are you happy?" "I'm amused," I said. "And tired. And finally awake." "You always were difficult to pity," she murmured, and then she did something I didn't expect. She bowed her head. "I'm sorry," she said. "For the ways I was cruel when it cost me nothing." For a second, the script lifted and the girl under it looked up at me, raw and undone. I nodded once. "Try to be happy without filming it," I said, and left her with her yoga mat and her apology. The system hummed thoughtfully. "That was humane." "Don't tell anyone," I muttered. "It will ruin my brand." 3 nights later, the war came to a head. Hans called at midnight, voice arctic calm. "Come to the office," he said. "Is it on fire?" I asked. "Only metaphorically." I went. The top floors were a cathedral of glass and intent. In the boardroom, men in very good suits looked like they'd just lost a hand of poker with God. On the long table were documents, glossy and predatory. At the head of the table, a man with a politician's smile was speaking in measured threats. "And so, Mr. Thorne, in the interest of stabilizing the market's confidence, we recommend you step aside into an advisory role while we execute the merger. You'll retain your dignity and a generous package, of course." "Of course," Hans said, like he was being told whether. "And who holds majority in this merger?" A single shoulder lifted. "The street." I had not been invited to this party, but I have never let that stop me. I slipped into a chair along the wall and crossed my legs like I owned them. "Hi," I said to the room at large. "Quick question, in your deck for the merger, which I can only assume you prepared because you thought he wouldn't read the fine print, did you account for the poison pill clause he buried after the last attempted coup?" Head swiveled. The politician smiled more tightly. "I'm sorry, and you are?" "His arrogant fiancé," I said pleasantly. "Ex-fiancé. Occasional conscience. Frequent nuisance. A woman who has memorized more footnotes than you remember writing." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "There is no poison pill." "Not anymore," I agreed. "Because I pulled it out 6 months ago when I thought he might need to grow up without a crutch." A hush fell, the kind that follows facts that alter landscapes. Hans turned his head slowly, the way predators turn when something more interesting than prey enters the clearing. "You did what?" he asked. "I removed the clause that would have saved you automatically," I said. "Because you don't deserve automatic anything. If you were going to keep this throne, I wanted it to be because you chose to stand rather than because the floor rose under you." He stared at me like I'd slapped him and gifted him a kingdom in the same gesture. The politician, sensing an opening, leaned forward. "Then there is nothing to stop this vote," he purred. "There is," I said. "Your math." I slid a folder onto the table. "You've miscounted the convertible notes. 3 funds flipped this afternoon when the market digested the gala fiasco. I sent them a different story to chew. A better one. You're short 5%. "No one flips that fast," he scoffed. "Story does," I said. "And story decides price now more than product. You should know, you've been selling fairy tales your whole career." Hans's eyes were on me like heat. The politician checked his phone, blanched, and then did what men like him do when the narrative deserts them. He got mean. "You should control your companion," he told Hans. "She's exposing liabilities." Hans didn't look away from me when he said, "She's exposing spine." The vote failed. The politician smiled anyway, vowed to be collegial, then stalked out with his pack. When the room emptied, the air tasted like copper. Hans leaned on the table with both hands and lowered his head like a man confessing to himself. You removed my safety, he said. Yes. You gave me a chance to fail. Yes. He straightened. And when I did, you came anyway. Yes, I said softly, and the word held 7 lives worth of history. He crossed the distance between us like a decision. I've been blind, he said. I know, I said. I don't want to be, he said. Then don't. He reached for my hand then, and it wasn't the grasp of a king taking possession of tribute. It was the palm-up offering of a man who knew what it cost to hold something carefully. The system, irrepressible, squealed. Affection level. Don't say it, I warned. 80, whispered, trembling. 80, host. Calibrate your instruments, I told it, but my breath was not steady. We didn't kiss in the boardroom. We stood very close and stared at each other and let 100 versions of catastrophe walk past without stopping. When I finally went home, the night felt different. Not safe, never that, but possible. We built something, after that. Not a montage. A scaffolding. We learned our fights. He learned that silence can be a weapon. I learned that jokes can be a wall. He apologized badly and then better. I forgave him quickly and then slower. We met in the middle like a bridge that insists on meeting. Erica sent a message, months later, that she was studying in a city that didn't know her face. Leo wrote an op-ed about doing the right thing when it isn't narratively satisfying. The market stabilized. The scholarships doubled. The girls built an app that disrupted a system that deserved disruption, and they did it while eating pizza in a lab that had their names on the door. One morning in late spring, I woke to birds yelling and sunlight bullying its way around my blackout curtains, and the system humming like a refrigerator on the other side of my skull. Host, it whispered. Your mission. I blinked. Right. Criteria check, it said, and I could hear it shuffling its little celestial paperwork. Primary objective, win the villain. Secondary objective, survive with dignity. Tertiary objective, optional exit upon completion. Win, I repeated, tasting the word. Such a small verb for such a large thing. Hans Thorn's affection level is at. Don't you dare say it, I murmured. It laughed, a small sound like chimes. Host, it said more gently, would you like to cash out? You have accrued sufficient points for departure. The door is open. I stared at the ceiling while the sun climbed the wall and set the room on soft fire. Next to me, Hans slept on his stomach, hand flung out, palm up, as if he had reached for me in his dreams. He snored, faint and unglamorous. A man, not a myth. Exit where? I asked. Home, the system said. This is, I said, and surprised myself, becoming that. Silence. Then, understood. I will remain. On probation, I said. If you nag, I'll trade you in for a dog. Dog smell, it said primly. Men do too, I said, and watched Hans stir, stretch, wake. He rolled toward me, eyes crinkled, mouth soft with sleep. Morning, he rasped. Stay. Bossy, I said. Blind, he said, and then amended, was, I agreed. He reached for me, lazy and certain. When his hand found mine, it wasn't a trophy hoisted. It wasn't a leash or a truce. It was a greeting. Hello, beloved enemy. Hello, possible life. The system cleared its throat again because it cannot help itself. I am required, it said, to mark mission status. Fine, I said. Mark it. Completed, it whispered. With distinction. I smiled into the morning and let the old script slide off me like a too-tight dress. We had built a new one, word by stubborn word, unfilmed and unglittered, sturdy enough to carry us forward. Later that day, we stood on the balcony between our two old worlds, his and Erica's, and looked out at a skyline that had stopped feeling like a ceiling and started feeling like scaffolding. Cars made small, persistent rivers below. Somewhere, a girl with acne scars and prophecy in her mouth was demoing her next prototype to a room that finally knew how to listen. We should sell your condo, Hans said. The one by Erica. You keep going out there to haunt old ghosts. I keep going out there to check that they're really gone, I said. Almost done. His fingers brushed my wrist in the place where the vein pulsed, steady as a drum learning a softer tempo. Marry me, he said abruptly. I laughed, startled. You skipped several chapters. We've lived them, he said. I want receipts, I said. Recompense for the patience of 8 lives. He looked stricken. How much? He asked, reaching instinctively for the card that was no longer the centerpiece of our story. Not money, I said, and rose on my toes to kiss a mouth that had learned the difference between taking and receiving. He caught his breath against my lips and gave it back because he had learned that too. Then what? He asked, rough. Breakfast, I said. On Sundays. With silence that isn't a weapon. With newspapers and jam. With the window open. With you saying my name like it's a decision and me saying yours like it's a promise. He closed his eyes like a prayer had brushed his lashes. I can do that, he said. I know, I said. That's why I'm saying yes. He opened his eyes, startled. You, what, yes? Yes, I said, and watched a man who had bent cities take one step back because his knees forgot how to hold him up. It was, hands down, my favorite thing I'd seen in any lifetime. The system, irrepressible, clapped. Affection level. Don't ruin this, I hissed. Irrelevant, it finished, smug. Because you just wrote a better metric. We celebrated badly and then better. The ring was simple and wrong, we returned it for one that felt like us, understated, stubborn, brighter in sunlight than in chandeliers. There was no gala. We told almost no one. The girls brought paper stars and taped them to our kitchen ceiling and ate pancakes that came out burned on the first batch and perfect on the second. Leo sent a letter that said, in essence, I'm learning. Erica sent nothing, which felt like a kind of grace. On a Sunday that smelled like oranges and headlines, Hans poured coffee into the mug that had become mine and said, without preamble, I'm going to spend the rest of my life boring you with my tenderness. Ambitious, I said. And I am going to ask, he went on, to be forgiven, not for what I did, but for how long it took me to do otherwise. I looked at him over the rim of my cup. I forgive future slowness preemptively, I said. Retroactive forgiveness is case by case. He nodded solemnly. Fair. We ate toast. We didn't perform it. The morning slid by like a boat on an obedient river. When the sun crawled past the window and kissed my ring, it flashed like a secret I had chosen to tell. The system hummed, content. Host, it said quietly, would you like to archive the mission file? Not yet, I said. Let's keep reading. Very well, it said, and then, because it cannot help itself, added, affection level. Incalculable. For once, I didn't argue. I set down my cup and reached for the man across from me like a woman uninterrupted by the script the world had written for her. He met me halfway, as we had promised. Outside, the city rehearsed being itself. Inside, we rehearsed being ours. And the 8th time I got dropped into a billionaire romance novel, the ending didn't glitter. It glowed, quiet as breakfast, steady as breath, fierce as a decision made and remade until it became a life.